Meet Rick Sanchez, scientist, alcoholic, part-time god, and full-time disaster magnet. If there's a painfully absurd, galaxy-shattering, or self-destructive way to prove a theory, he's done it. Usually to himself. He doesn't just survive, he treats his own mortality like a recurring, deeply disappointing Tuesday appointment. This is what happens when a brain runs hotter than the universe can handle. Rick's thoughts bend physics, melt timelines, and occasionally turn him into a condiment, and that's just before breakfast. So today we're going season by season through his most impossible survival stories, tracking the full price of being the smartest man in infinite realities. And the currency is concussions. Grab your portal gun and whatever's left of your sanity because things are about to explode in every dimension. Buckle up, we are starting the body count immediately with the first concussion. Rick and Morty deploy a simple love serum that instantly triggers a planet-wide infection, resulting in a full-blown Cronenberg apocalypse. Rick knows he's screwed up, so he whips up a final solution in the garage. He twists a screw on his device, which then violently explodes, instantly and messily killing the Rick and Morty who were working on it. But here's the best part. The original Rick and Morty didn't survive that blast. They died messy and quick. The current Rick just shrugged, dragged the corpses out to the backyard, and buried them. The concussion here isn't just trauma. It's the sheer cold shock of seeing your own two dead bodies. That nihilistic blast marks the first major tally on our count. 1 body count, 0 regrets. While escaping injury in his own chaotic multiversal adventures, Rick's grandson, Morty, has occasionally been forced to intervene. In one of the split realities Rick created, things got so frantic that Morty had to take drastic action. While Rick was busy trying to blast his own alternate self, Morty snuck up and delivered a surprise blow from behind just to calm his grandfather down. That's right, Rick got a big dramatic blackout. A solid hit to the head that put him lights out and likely gave the genius a temporary and well-deserved headache when he woke up in a dog crate. You know, even a super genius like Rick can not only suffer a massive head trauma, but even a massive heart trauma that leads to a full system shutdown. After Unity breaks up with him, Rick spirals into one of his darkest moments. He builds a death ray to end his life, but his body may be protecting itself, or maybe just exhausted from all the drugs and drinking, decides to intervene. He then prepares to do this to himself, but passes out unconscious before the machine can fully prepare the ray, causing him to barely survive this suicide attempt. Instead of a blow to the head, Rick got hit by a tidal wave of sadness so powerful it forced a complete, self-inflicted blackout. He just collapsed and was found passed out at his desk for the rest of the day and night. Not a typical sports injury, but definitely a major neurological incident. This time, Rick wondered to himself, why settle for a simple concussion when you can achieve multiverse-spanning trauma? So he turns himself into a car battery life form, gets stabbed by microscopic aliens, which puts his entire consciousness through the ringer. And as if that wasn't enough neurological stress, he followed it up by throwing an apocalyptic bender on multiple dying worlds and then hosts a party that literally kills planets.
Now let's get out of here and destroy this whole universe.
Excuse me?
He wakes up hungover, not dead, proving alcohol is his true immortality serum. He survived being system shocked by an entire microverse and a blackout so intense it outlasted several worlds. That's not just a concussion. That's Rick pushing his brains far past the point of limits. Now this concussion is the phase of deep existential pain, and Rick faces a double tap to the brain. While imprisoned and undergoing horrific psychic torture, escaping meant Rick's original body had to die. So, a SEAL team member walks up and shoots Rick's old body right in the head, destroying it instantly. That is one fatal concussion, absorbed just for a portal out of a bad situation. But Rick's mind is untouchable. He instantly uploads his consciousness into a new body, poor Agent Cornelius Daniel. And that new host is immediately shot in the head by another SEAL team Rick. That's 2 successive fatal brain injuries in 30 seconds. Rick's consciousness survives by treating 2 deadly headshots like minor software glitches. He simply bypassed the annihilation. That total fatal head trauma is the most mind-bending concussion on our count. The infamous Pickle Rick. This episode is less about a simple knockout and more about a sustained, self-inflicted campaign of head trauma fueled by a refusal to face his emotions. Why get a concussion in a bar fight when you can give yourself one fighting for survival in the sewers? Let's start off with how Rick is seen cutting a sewer gate using a makeshift exosuit of decapitated roaches and how he begins to kill every rat in sight. And after building a disgusting exoskeleton and waging full-blown war against an army of rats, he emerges in an office building to face Russian agents and the deadly operative, Jaguar. The fight is intense, leaving him pretty bruised up. He eventually stumbles into the therapy office, badly injured, confirming that he took a savage, long beating, all to prove he didn't need to put in the boring work of self-improvement. The man gave his head more trauma fighting vermin and spies than he did in actual space battles. Talk about another bad day for Rick's brains. This episode is basically a highlighted reel of Rick's giving themselves concussions, and worse, on repeat, thanks to something called Operation Phoenix. You see, after a simple argument over a death crystal sends the ship crashing, Rick is flung into a spiked rock, killing him. Yes, killed. But the real fun starts when his consciousness keeps popping up in alternate fascist realities. Because he hated those realities so much, Rick was forced to become a recurring mass murderer and commit suicide dozens of times. A whole new level of self-inflicted head trauma just to get back to a normal dimension. Finally, when he and the helpful Wasp Rick confront monstrous cyborg Morty, Rick takes one last brutal hit before the fight ends as Rick and Morty are stuck and fall to the ground. So Rick endured a fatal impalement, survived being killed and resurrected repeatedly across multiple dimensions, and took a final blunt force trauma blow. That's a dimension-hopping brain concussion marathon at this point. When Rick and Morty escape a war zone, Rick's brain barely makes it back in one piece. He kicks off the episode already a physical disaster, proving the genius is nowhere near invincible. A wounded Rick is carried by Morty as Rick passes out from his injuries. He was literally bleeding out from a life-threatening injury. But the final blow to his already scrambled mind comes later. During a fight with Mr. Nimbus beats up Rick before controlling the police to arrest him. Rick went from mortally wounded and unconscious to taking a final savage beatdown from a magical sea god. It's safe to say his head suffered a trauma marathon, not a simple concussion too many times. This time, leave it to evil Morty to deliver a crushing blow to the smartest man in the universe. Even after surviving his own chaotic schemes, Rick finally met an antagonist clever enough to get the drop on him. When President Morty activates the Citadel's dimensional drive, the entire space station begins to tear itself apart, and Rick gets caught directly in the carnage, and as the Citadel begins to collapse, Rick is trapped under debris. That's a full-on crushing injury. Rick was pinned down and in danger of being liquefied into clone paste. He needed his grandson's help to escape a guaranteed messy death, proving that no matter how brilliant you are, you still can outsmart gravity or a building collapse. Rick's biggest injury here wasn't a physical wound. Humiliated by the perfect dinosaurs, Rick decided to get a terminal concussion by embracing oblivion. He travels to Mars and claims he'll wait for the killer meteor with the dinosaurs, risking his life out of pettiness. He was willing to be atomized just to prove a point. But the final blow to his ego came when the dinosaurs ruined his season. He screams in despair because they closed the interdimensional rift and stole his story arc. Rick survived the physical threat, but his mind suffered a screaming existential concussion because his rivals dared to steal his narrative. The fear holds fake Rick gets hit with something far worse than a concussion. He gets hit by his own heart's desire. The more this manifestation of Rick indulges in his perfect reunion with his deceased wife, Diane, the more the fear hold literally drains his essence. Morty is forced to watch his grandpa waste away, realizing that indulging in his own deepest trauma is causing a slow, painful death. It's an injury of pure existential decay, the perfect, horrific concussion for a man trying to die rather than dealing with his feelings. This episode hits us with a brand new flavor of brain injury. Not your average bump on the noggin, but a full-on system crash. Enter Homesteader Rick, the space cowboy who just wanted to mind his own crops and live that rustic interdimensional dream. But of course, peace and quiet are illegal in the multiverse. The Citadel Rick show up like space cops with something to prove, and when Homesteader Rick tries to bow out gracefully, they shoot him anyway. Classic Rick behavior. 1 second he's walking away, the next he's eating dirt with a bullet in his chest. His poor car drones go into panic mode, frantically sewing him back together like robot Florence Nightingales. The guy basically rage reboots on the spot, half dead, half metal, 100% furious. That wasn't just a gunshot, it was a trauma update that turned Farmer Rick into a vengeance-fueled killing machine. And honestly, can you blame him? Just another day, another massive concussion in the never-ending highlight reel of Rick's brain injuries. At this point, his neurons deserve hazard pay. After 12 concussions, a few gunshots, and several emotional implosions, one thing's obvious. Rick Sanchez doesn't just break the laws of physics, he breaks his own skull on them. Rick's brain has been blown up, rebooted, cloned, and cry-screamed back to life more times than we can count. But somehow, every blow just makes him meaner, smarter, and more unhinged. At this point, head trauma isn't a setback, it's his creative process. Wubba-lubba-dub-dub, pain's just part of the genius, baby.